Welcome back to MCP Week, everyone. In this video, I'm excited to be joined by Zdenek Nemec, the co-founder and CTO of Superface, an Agentic AI pioneer and former director of DSL at Apiary, an API consultant for companies such as DHL and Adidas. Zdenek, better known as Z. Thanks very much for joining us here on the channel. Very much appreciate your time. I've hinted at your background a little bit there, but why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got where you are and what you're working on right now, especially at Superface?
Thank you, Martin, and thanks for having me. So yes, the name is Z. I'm an API expert. As you said, I've been previously at API. This is actually a long time ago, where API description formats were at their inception. So that's long before OpenAPI. It's just like the times of Swagger. I myself author API blueprint. So Markdown-based description format for APIs. And basically, we walked around and we were saying, hey, these APIs are pretty important for your business. And as such, you should design them properly, and maybe this is how you should do it, and you should really care about the developer experience with APIs. So that was what I was doing for almost a decade before I started my own consulting firm on APIs, where I work with the largest enterprises we have on this planet, actually, like Volkswagen Group or Deutsche Post DHL. And a couple of years ago, the team was repeating the manual integration processes, the problems with the APIs, API versioning, all those things that we all know. And I aim to solve this with Superface.ai, which is my current project where I'm the founder and CTO. And Superface AI specializes on in connecting AI agents in a way to APIs in a way that works. So related to MCPs, to our topic today, we automate the connections in the first place and also make them working, helping agents to achieve the success rates that we all like to see.
One of the things that you've been focused on for quite a while, and you've spoken on it a bunch of times, and I'm going to link a few of the talks that you've given in the description of the video below, is Agentic AI. And more specifically, how agents are going to interact with other services. Could you give us an overview, I guess, of what is your thoughts on that space and kind of where you think it's headed versus where it is now? Like your thesis on this, I guess.
Well, I would not call it thesis, but my point of view, or actually ours at Superface, because we are spending a lot of research in AI and connectivity and AI tooling area, is that first and foremost it's the word agentic. Like what agentic mean, or what an AI agent is. That's a very, I would say, overused word. And it might mean anything from AI workflow automation, so your typical, basically, iPaaS automation, where there is some LLM here and there, to a fully autonomous agent that should go out there, figure out what you are asking to do, and do it. And so that's what we are looking at when we talk about agentic AI, not necessarily your cursor copilots and AI workflow automation. And that's where there is a kind of big reality gap between what we would like it to be doing, or what we think it might be doing, and what it currently can do. So that's what we are looking at, like pushing the boundaries of what it would be possible with the software, AI-powered software that works on our behalf.
I'd love your take on MCP as someone who's focused on the area of connecting APIs to AI for some time now. It appeared relatively quickly at the end of November. We're only at the beginning of June right now, but it feels like it's been one of the biggest shifts, other than kind of AI itself, in terms of connectivity when it comes to APIs. What are your thoughts on MCP?
So first of all, it's a great move by Anthropic. So kudos to them for pulling out this hat trick. This also goes back to Swagger being donated to Open or Linux Foundation and becoming Open API format many years ago. So sometimes companies are able to pull this trick, like an MCP. Now, MCP by itself, to me, it's like doing or signaling one thing, and that is that APIs and tools are essential for AI, and that AI really the success and the basically the usefulness of any AI solution, not just agents, really depends on the tools that it has at its disposal. So that's the main message to me. And what are the tools? Well, in our world, in our API world, the tools are usually API calls, right, or provided through API calls. But MCP goes further than that. It also has this concept of resources, which is not necessarily related to REST API resources. So it doesn't have to be only API calls. Now, of course, I guess for this exercise, we'll be more or less talking about APIs behind the tools. But yeah, MCP is essentially here and here to stay and saying, hey, this is a very important topic. Tools for agents, tools for AI are massively important, and we should try to push for some standardization for various reasons. So as such, I really welcome this initiative. And also I'm happy to see that it's getting embraced by more and more companies.
Yeah, it feels like now, it's reached that level of adoption where it's gone past the point of probably disappearing, right? Or becoming, the tool that gets usurped by something else, ultimately.
Correct.
But you talked about, how it can be more than just APIs. What else, could it be in terms of that connectivity? Obviously, yes, we're focused very much on APIs here at Zuplo, but it's always interesting to know kind of like, and I think that's where so many people are focused around, MCP necessarily right now, is that it's just that way of connecting AI to APIs. But if it's more than that, what could it be?
Well, it could be any data. It could be any source of the data. So it could be your files. It could be your databases, vector databases. You can have any sort of data or activities or actions exposed through or made available to underlying LLM through MCP. So anything really, it's not just the API calls. I think that aspect of MCP is currently not all that popular or known. Everybody's now focusing basically on making it accessible or making API accessible through MCP, but there is also this important thing, and I would say it will play a more important role later.
Based off of that, a lot of people, they still do think that kind of connecting APIs to LLMs is a pretty simple solution, and that that more kind of like one-to-one connection is going to be as much as they need to do, but it's not really that simple. And this from the work at Superface. What are some of the common issues that agents and LLMs face when actually connecting with APIs, whether they're using MCP or not? As they are presented today, like it's not as easy, I think, as everybody thinks it is.
There is a lot, right? We are actually compiling a list of these issues, and they also change every day, right? So there are many issues. I would split them into big areas. One are sort of like business-related problems, and then there are technical issues or implementation or design of tools or APIs issues. So I did a couple of talks on this topic, especially with regards to APIs. On the business side of things, it's us as API providers, we are, I would say, making it very difficult for everybody to consume our capabilities. And of course, it goes back to like the business incentives. Why are businesses having APIs in the first place? How are they basically allowing companies or individuals to access their APIs and their capabilities? What capabilities are available through APIs? That's all the business decisions, right? Like why are we building? So, and this goes all the way to API economy. So why are businesses employing APIs and how they are doing that? So that's one thing. There's nothing new really there. And then there is technical aspects of how do I provide the capabilities to an AI or LLMs. I would say MCPs are only basically scratching the surface, and they are just essentially a transport layer for the capabilities, for the tools, for the actions, for data. But they are not solving the fundamental problems with how, or MCP is not solving the fundamental problems for how do I expose the tools in a way that works for agents. And this is feel free to jump in. But this is like a massive list of you need to take everything into account: the context sizes, the limitation of models, the number of tools that you are that is needed to achieve a task with your MCP server or an API. Also matters the way how you describe these tools, the way how you design these tools that are being published through MCP. Everything really matters and has a tremendous impact on the success rates of underlying AI solution.
I'm interested to know your thoughts on something that I've been thinking about a little bit recently, which is that right now the usage of tools inside of any capable platform or within an LLM is very much a manual thing, right? You have to go and add those tools for yourself a lot of the time. You've got to either do it, in the case of MCP, set things up locally, configure that stuff, and then have it be aware of the tools that are available at the end of that particular server, whether it's running locally or even if it's running remotely. The onus is very much on you going out and finding said tools based on what it is you want to connect and actually making that connection for yourself. It feels like discovery or agentic discovery of tools needs to be the next thing that happens here, so that there's less human involvement, right? And that the decisions could be made by an LLM that this tool could be good with this service. I want to go and see if it actually has tools for me and add them. Do you think that we're getting closer to this now?
Not yet.
No. Okay. Why?
We are doing the same over and over. So this was the problem before MCP, before AI, with APIs. You came to an API, you thought a little bit more complex API. So, for example, a payment API. You would just think, hey, I'll use some sort of make a payment functionality and it will happen, right? But no, you need to do this and you do that and a couple of calls that are needed before you can even initiate the payment, right? So there are these business rules and there are these processes and you need to discover those first before you can use them. Before that, those were engineers and developers. Now we would love to hope that it's AI who figures out, hey, I want to do a hotel check-in. So I need to do this 6 calls before I can actually check somebody into a hotel. Well, we are very far from that. The APIs are not ready for it. The LLMs are not that powerful to figure out these business rules, and we are also very bad at documenting these processes. So, besides very simple examples, we are still very far from having an AI figuring out business processes and how to actually execute them properly with APIs.
I mean, you wrote a blog post recently about the AI agent reality gap, where there's, I think it was something like, based off what you had seen in the testing at Superface, like a 75% failure rate in agent tasks. What's kind of behind that number? I'd love to know how you approach this testing as well, and what kind of failures are we talking about? Was it exactly that like ultimately, unless it's very, very specific, they just don't know what they're doing?
Yeah. And there we are not even talking as complex use cases as payments, making a payment or checking the hotel. We are talking in that particular article or benchmark we were running, we were using somewhat simple use cases for AI, agentic AI interacting with CRM systems. So your Salesforce or HubSpot and trying to create a new lead and move somebody in a pipeline, or get some information that everyday salesperson needs. So just a little bit background. We were trying to build an agent for sales folks a year ago or over a year ago, and while I think it's still the most advanced agent to date in this area, like autonomous agent who's able to fulfill everyday salesperson task. It was frustratingly unreliable. And so we started looking into why this is, how we can fix that, where are the problems. And basically that's our core IP at Superface, understanding like how this agent and the tools around this agent should be designed so they can work successfully. Now, when we saw a study from Salesforce that was conducted by researchers and supported by Salesforce, basically similar thing, trying to compare agents, trying to accomplish tasks with Salesforce. The reliability rates were there like up to 50 or 54%. And what we mean here by reliability is taking a set of tasks, let's say 6 tasks, again, create a lead, update the pipeline, 6 tasks like this, and run them not once, all these 6, but 10 times, and looking at all these 10 runs, where in each run you run every single task of them, and you are looking at the likelihood of all of them succeeding. Now, if you run it only once, all these 6 tasks, well, we are getting to numbers that might surprise somebody, and we are looking at numbers around 50%. So really, what we've seen from Salesforce. So that was our own benchmark, very similar results, 50, 60%, and if you run it multiple times, obviously you would like to run the same set of tasks 6 times or 10 times, and you would like to see the same success rate, but it's not the truth. It's actually dropping down to even 0 or 10, 20%. So chances that all 6 tasks will succeed if you run them 10 times are really dim, less than 20, 30%.
So that self-discovery thing I was talking about, probably a little bit further away.
Yeah, that's even not that's not even a question. Like, ideally, we want to
my
have
pipe
this.
dream is gone.
It's not gone. We are working towards it, and we are going to deliver it. But there is a way to get there.
Okay, excellent. I mean, in that article, I think you highlighted some of the reasons why this stuff broke down, and it was related to aspects like planning, reasoning, and the ultimate like execution of the actual task as being like some of the core challenges. Could you walk us through like an example of where like those things broke down and how they broke down?
It goes to like what you want the AI to accomplish. And I'll start with a very simple example, and that will be asking AI agent, whatever, or GPT or Claude, am I available today? Or book me, an appointment with Martin when I'm available today. Now, as simple as it seems, so you can just API call whatever you are using, Google Mail API, and ask what are the events. But actually, you need to do a little bit more. You need first to make sure the agent understands where you are. Like, what is your time zone? What is your local? Like, what are your maybe working hours, right? So that information you can get from the Google Calendar as well. So you can, up front, you can download or query the API, get me, the working hour of this person, get me the time zone you are in, stuff like that you do before you are actually querying that calendar with that main question, hey, when I'm available today. It's essentially important for that agent to answer correctly, right? So if you first do API calls like what time zone you are in, when are the working hours, then only then you can ask like, hey, when is what are the slots that are available today, right? So this is a very simple example. On a very simple example, your agent needs to understand it needs to do these things up front to do it reliably, right? And if once out of 10 runs, it will forget to maybe ask like what time zone you're in or what are your working hours, then the likelihood there is that it will fail, right? And this is, again, the simplest example that I can think of.
How do you engineer towards this being more successful?
So there are many points in a sort of life cycle of AI application where you can tackle this, right? I would say one point is training the model. If the model is trained, and again, that might be as simple as giving it examples like, hey, I want to book appointment, this is what you need to do. So that would be at a training the model time. On the far right would be changing that API or changing that MCP for what I'm concerned, like the tool description, like in an API description of that endpoint, like maybe you have an endpoint get me availability. You might hint in the description, the users, hey, maybe you want to also call, like, give me the working hours and check the time zone before you use any information from this endpoint. So that would be changing that information in that API itself, or maybe providing a specific designing a specific endpoint, like for that particular use case on that API, right? So you can train model, you can change APIs, and there are, of course, things that you can do in between. That's, of course, prompting the agent, having some system prompts when you are doing this, think about this and that, or maybe, doing it on the tool level or doing it in the translation layer where you get the tools from MCP, but before you expose those tools to the agent, to the model. So there are like different points in that AI application where you can tackle this. And of course, it depends on where you can. Maybe you are not allowed to change the model. Maybe you cannot change that API. So you need to, and you cannot touch the MCP server. So you need to do it after you get that information from the MCP server. So it really depends where you are, how much control you have over the entire stack between the model and the API call.
And I think also there's an aspect here too that you've spoken about before that I'd like to talk about, and that is that right now, a lot of people are focusing on agents that are very general in their approach to stuff, right? Being able to achieve like anything that anybody wants to do. And actually, maybe that isn't the best approach, right? You have mentioned before about the concept of like, I guess, narrow agents or like specialist agents in certain things. What is that to start with? And like, what are the trade-offs, I guess, for those specialist agents?
So that's our approach at Superface to raising the reliability, to raising the success rates of AI solutions and succeeding. And that is basically us thinking, hey, maybe we can break this problem down into small pieces. So we don't have to have your main AI agent figuring it out all. Maybe it has similar to microservice architecture. Maybe you can have some smaller agents that are specialists at doing tasks, right? That are specialists at maybe creating the lead or figuring out the calendar availability. So you can think of these little trained agents, and by train I don't mean training the model, but training the agent. You can have these like specialist agents that know maybe how your company is creating new opportunities in your CRM. Because that will do the heavy lifting. Your main agent doesn't have to know necessary details. It has a lot of benefits. It has basically the benefit of that you can encapsulate, like any abstraction layer. You can encapsulate all that complexity in the little specialist agents. The specialist agents can be trained and teach basically about how you are doing things, how they should be doing things. And the main engine doesn't have to worry about it. So that's how we are raising the reliability and the success rates of AI solutions with the specialist agents.
I think that's a good concept for a lot of people to consider as well, right? Especially if they're going out and building, right? Is focus on task and like try to refine things as best as you can, because your success rate is potentially going to be much higher than being so very broad.
Oh, absolutely. Like as with even API design, if you know the use cases for your API, then the chances of succeeding with your APIs are higher, right? They have like what we were saying for years, like have a API product manager, a person who knows and cares about how your users are using your API, understand their use cases, design those use cases. There is still no escaping to that.
So from the API point of view, you're working in the agentic space, you're connecting LLMs to APIs on a very regular basis. You're no doubt seeing lots of different patterns where people are not doing things as well as they could to be more ready for this from the API point of view. What things work best in your experience when you're building an API for like agentic or LLM consumption, and how can people prepare themselves, I guess, which feels like it's a necessity almost these days.
Absolutely.
When they're building, an API. How do they prepare to be, I guess, ready for the onslaught of LLMs, agents, and MCP servers coming at them?
Yeah, first and foremost, start to think about those as your API users, agents. I mean, we did recently a talk with my good friend Emmanuel Paraskakis on how to design APIs for AI. So I would also kindly suggest to look at the slides and maybe the recording of that talk. So because I'll be basically just rephrasing what we were saying there. But there are many aspects of what you want to look and think about when you're designing your API for AI. I would say the number one thing goes again back to the use cases, and that's a number of the tools, number of the API calls that are needed to complete something with your API. Right now in 25, it's June 25, the good number of tools translated to API calls exposed to LLM for achieving a reliable agent is around 10 to 20. There is no use for turning your entire API and all 300s of endpoint into 300 of MCP server tools. That won't fly. That won't work. That's like number one thing. Like if you think about achieving something with your API, think about the number of API calls that are necessarily needed. So that's one of the probably most important things. And then of course, document everything, describe everything. It comes with a warning though. Recently, HubSpot released their MCP server, which is quite nice. But the descriptions are quite large. They are over 300 characters. And I think there was last time we checked 21 tools in that MCP server. Of course, HubSpot API is massive, right?
Yeah, it's huge.
So they only put 21 tools in that MCP server, but each of them had 300 characters description or over. And that's tremendously slowing down the AI models. So when we are running our benchmarks, we noticed this. We were not measuring that execution time as part of it, but we noticed that the number of tools and the length of the descriptions also slowed down. So I'm saying on one hand, hey, describe everything. Describe any relations between the endpoints. Maybe, as I said, if you check availability, call also that endpoint. So be very thorough in the description, but at the same time keep it concise and small. It's a tough dance, but that's something that you need to think about when you are thinking about providing reliable API for AI. And there is more. So yeah, again, check out our talk with Emmanuel. I think we covered it quite nicely.
Yeah, I'll link that in the description of the video as well below. Emmanuel, of course, been on the channel recently, so you can see that video of him and I playing around with LLMs, generating OpenAPI documents and trying to get the best OpenAPI document that we could out of ChatGPT's free tier, which actually did work extremely well, which is a big shift from where things previously were not even that long ago. One final question I'm curious about as well is that, and it relates to the context window to a degree as well, and descriptions that are there, for tools. You talked about HubSpot and the way that they've, got quite a lot of characters in the descriptions there for the tools that they have, but the descriptions do need to be of a certain length at least in order for the LLM to really understand what that particular tool is capable of. API documentation is one of the ways that LLMs could learn about how an API is actually used, regardless of whether there's tools available or not. Is there a best practice way you think of presenting your documentation these days for that kind of consumption?
I think it doesn't matter. I would say open API, and this might not be popular, doesn't matter. Because what we actually built at Superface is an agent that you say, hey, I want to, create a task in Todoist. You just say that. This thing will go out on the web. It does a Google search or Bing search, I'm not sure. It basically does a web search. It figures out what is Todoist. It finds its API documentation. It goes to this human readable documentation. I don't even know how that documentation looks really. So it goes out, it figures out from the documentation what API calls are needed, and it creates that integration, it creates that connector and whatever MCP server for that. So honestly, I don't know how Todoist API documentation looks like. I don't care as much as long as those important informations are there. So it's really now not necessarily about the form of the documentation, how it looks, whether it's an open API in Markdown, in plain text, in some fancy HTML. as long as this thing can go there and find that information, then the format actually doesn't matter. What matters is, of course, that the information is there, that you still document the endpoints, that you still document the responses in one way or another, that you document the business logic, that you describe, hey, if you call this endpoint, make sure this and that is also called, that you document the authentication schemes, and of course getting the keys and getting to even use your API. So this you need to document. But whether you use plain Markdown or Open API, it doesn't matter these days.
Well, that's great. I didn't know that was the case. I thought that, always thinking about the context window, that, the smaller or more plain text you could make something, the better it's going to be when it comes to that kind of consumption. But it sounds like we're kind of beyond that, really.
Oh, well, when it gets to the runtime. So when an agent needs to call your API, just to make this clear, then the context window matters. Like if you like an example I'm using was accessing a Gmail information, and we were building some agent that was working with mail, and we were pulling all the information about an email from Google Mail API, and that included base64 encoded attachments, which is a very bad idea for a couple of reasons. It of course blew the context window. Base64 is a lot of characters. It's very slow because it's a lot of characters, and it costs you a lot of money because it's the tokens. Yeah. So you really want to be and the task was like, I don't know, find the emails, whatever, senders of those emails, and we were pulling all the information about base64 encoded attachment in those emails. That was not necessary, right? So keep this in mind, like design your endpoints that I can choose not to get all that information. This is where GraphQL shines, really. So I have a control of how much data or how little data I'm getting from an API. So keep that in mind. That's very important when you are designing your API. Context size definitely matters, but not for agent that needs to figure out how to call your API.
I think we'll go with one final question, and it's really just about what the rest of this year could potentially look like from, the agentic LLMs, MCP, API point of view. You're thinking about this kind of stuff a lot. What do you think is going to be happening for the next 6 months that is going to continue this? Anything jump out as a big possibility for you?
How Gartner is calling this a valley of disillusion.
Valley of disillusion.
And it goes also to MCPs. Because right now, many people think MCP is this magical technology that solves AI interacting with APIs. Well, we haven't touched that, but it is not the case. And so people will start spitting out MCP servers. They might have hundreds of tools. They will be wondering why it doesn't work. They might have a poorly designed tools, poorly described tools in those MCP servers. They will figure out it doesn't work. It won't have solved authentication. It will have a lot of issues, and people will be only starting to realizing, oh, okay, there is much more is needed than just turning API into MCP. So we'll get to that. I suspect that big part of this will be this reality gap. So we think it is working. We think it is solved problem. But as we will really try to collectively deliver these AI agents that are working on our behalf, we'll start realizing, hey, there's this reality gap. This is not acceptable for my AI solution to work 40% of time out of 10 runs, and for 15% of time out of all of the 10 runs, right? So I think we'll be coming to this getting to this reality check and starting thinking about reliability and goal completion rate and success rates, and how to design the tools that we are giving to the agents in a way that it works.
Well, Z, thank you very much for joining us here on the channel. It's always a pleasure to talk to you about this kind of stuff and get your insights on it. Where can people find Superface if they want to check it out?
Oh, they can check out superface.ai. They can check out our blog. All the things, or many of those things we talked about are mentioned in our blog post. So check out superface.ai. Check me out at X or LinkedIn. I'll be happy to chat.
Fantastic. Well, look, thanks very much for joining us here for MCP Week. Have a great rest of the day. And thank you for watching. You'll see us tomorrow in another video. So do get subscribed to make sure that you know about that. And also check out the playlist of the videos that have already been out this week to hear more on MCP, AI, LLMs, and all of the things related to that and APIs. We'll see you soon.